In retrospect, it was my first photo road trip. Didn't matter that I wasn't really a photographer yet. It doesn't take much skill to aim and pull the trigger on a Nikon. That many of my pictures were not tack sharp or properly exposed wouldn't begin to irritate me until later. I left Florida and drove to Livingston, Montana in the summer of 2008, 15 years ago. I rented a cabin a few minutes outside of town, alongside the Yellowstone River, on the edge of an area known as Paradise Valley, where the writer Jim Harrison lived. My cabin was in a small cluster of cabins, priced within my teacher's budget, while also picturesque enough to excite my latent photography interest. Each cabin had its own name. I think mine was called Calamity Jane. The owners had a sculpture workshop out back, and some of their abstract creations were scattered around the yard. Summer flowers were everywhere in bloom, their colorful arrangements vividly contrasting with the rusted metal assemblages. And, of course, my front porch overlooked the Yellowstone River. In ancient India, they used to tie troubled people beside a river. And it only takes a few minutes watching and listening and surrendering your attention to understand why. Ever wonder why it's called Yellowstone? I fell in love with Livingston, Montana. Outwardly, it's Bubba country. Originally a railroad community from the 1880s, but underneath is a vibrant arts community. 3 museums in a town of less than 8,000 people. Many recognizable artists either live or hang out in this area. Musicians John Mayer and Jimmy Buffett are regular visitors. Buffett even wrote a song about Livingston. Writer Jim Harrison has a place on the river in Paradise Valley, and his friend Tom McGuane often vacations here out at Harrison's place. And others like Richard Brautigan when he was alive, Margot Kidder, Jeff Bridges, Anthony Bourdain, Dennis Quaid. Peter Fonda lives here full-time. Numerous films have shot location panoramas here, including A River Runs Through It and The Horse Whisperer. And Sam Peckinpah, the movie director, lived in a 3-room suite at the Murray Hotel from 1979 to 1984. One night, in a fit of drug-induced paranoia, he fired half a dozen .44 caliber bullets through the ceiling. I didn't know any of this about Livingston until later, except for Jim Harrison, who wrote Legends of the Fall. Interesting-looking guy, huh? I had read his books and knew his watering holes and tried to keep an eye out for him. Once, he and his friends were just a couple of tables away from mine, and I tried to sneak some pictures with my phone. But this is rugged Montana. Locals don't gawk at celebrities. I think it was Jim Harrison who said something about how millionaires and food stamp recipients live side by side in Livingston and actually talk to one another. It dawned on me later that for the first time I was carrying my camera with me everywhere I went, even inside bars and restaurants, gas stations and food stores. I didn't want to miss anything. Seemingly from out of nowhere, I slipped into street photography mode, never having even heard that term before. I could get a dopamine rush just from pressing the shutter button. It's quite an eye-opener when you first realize you get a thrill taking candid shots of strangers or prowling back alleys for visually interesting junk or graffiti or architectural patterns. There's something creative about that kind of endeavor, although I hadn't worked it out very clearly in my mind yet. It's not really about whether you're any good or not, but about finding an activity that speaks to you, that sparks you up, that encourages you just to be you. And in retrospect, that road trip out west is where it all began. It gave me an opportunity to see the world with fresh eyes and nurtured a taste for exploring the unknown that morphed into an addiction. Two years later, when I retired, I grabbed my cameras and hit the road full time, at least for a while, and have since logged, I've lost count exactly, but somewhere close to 10 coast-to-coast cross-country road trips. But wait, I haven't even mentioned the real reason I drove all the way to Montana.